There were to be no real surprises in the Anfield derby. Everton huffed and puffed. Beto should have scored. There was controversy, as there always seems to be, and the presumptive title winners came out on top. One to dissect and then put behind us, and move on to Saturday's clash with the Gunners, while hoping that next season's edition of this fixture sees a bit more balance in quality between the two teams. Hello Blues, and welcome back to the Evertonia podcast, a spontaneous second one for the week where we will dissect and then put to bed that narrow derby defeat and look ahead to the visit of the Gunners in what is, for now at least, the last ever scheduled lunchtime kickoff at Goodison Park. Adam and Andy are here with me for this one. And Andy, first of all, welcome back to the land of the living, because you've been ill this week, so I hope you're feeling better. And I know you've got a lot to say, so where do you want to start? We've got a possible red card not given, an offside goal, and Everton's overall performance to pour over. So what's top of mind for you? And then we'll go topic by topic.
I think it was another game that I've watched as a football fan, first and foremost, where I've just thought to myself, what am I watching? What am I watching here? Because, and I'm going to be very balanced about this, because half of this is about Tarkowski and half of this is about the goal that Liverpool scored. And they were the big two incidents of the game, right? They were the big two things that the game really hung on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start with Tarkowski because it was earlier in the game. Now, I can completely understand how a referee on the pitch would look at that. He kind of sees Tarkowski clear it, kind of goes through a little bit. The ball goes behind him, and he probably half looking at where the ball's gone. He knows Tarkowski's followed through. He went straight to his pocket and got yellow. And I thought, do you know what? I can see why you've done that. And you've been decisive. You've been quick. Well done. And then I saw it back on the replay. I was like, oh, dear. But I can understand the original referee's decision, right? Then what you've got is, and I use the word again, qualified referees looking at that from every single angle and coming up with the same answer. It's a red card all day long. There's no need for him to do that, right? I think every blue watching it would probably go, oh, we're in trouble here. This is 13 minutes in and we've got 77 to go in the derby. Great. And I didn't see another outcome. So you've got that, which is a kind of interpretation of the rules, which really, well, I mean, it's wrong. It didn't bug me at the time, obviously, because we benefited from it. But it's a really, really poor decision from the VAR, not from the referee on the pitch, from the VAR. Then, oh God, then you've got the bit that actually matters to an Evertonian in you, because the goal, okay, the goal. What's offside for? It's to stop players being between the last offender and the goal, right? That's the reason the rule exists. If he's passed that ball forward towards that player who is clearly offside, and I've heard Jared Branthwaite make the same point today, or last night, but I heard it today. What is Tarkowski supposed to do in that scenario in order to make him offside in the eyes of the law? Is he going to let it go? Of course he's not. So you've got a really, really poor rule. And I sat there last night and I actually said it out loud. And I looked round and I said, do you know what? I don't think I understand the rules in football anymore. And I've been watching it as an adult for about 30 years. And I'm watching my team play, and it's supposed to be entertainment. And I do not understand the rules. And even if I did, why on earth is that a rule in offside where you can clearly play the ball to somebody? It wasn't going to anybody else, was it? I mean, it was going to that. Was it Diaz?
Yeah.
It was going to Diaz, right? It was meant for nobody else. Diaz was offside. Tarkowski does his job and is penalised. The whole team is penalised because the guy's behind him. And I know Moyes expressed it last night. I've heard the players talk about it. Again, so you've got one interpretation of the laws of the game, which was really poor, and you've got one rule of the game, which is equally as bad. And I just sat there and thought, do you know what? Thank the Lord above, this does not matter. Or at least I don't think it does, because Ipswich are winning, and I was thinking, oh my God. But imagine if it did. And it's just I just don't understand it anymore. And I get really, really annoyed. Because what am I watching? I'm watching something I don't understand, and I can't really relate to the rules of it. And that's the biggest thing for me. I'm speaking as a football fan, not really as an Evertonian, because, of course, I was quite pleased Tarkowski stayed on the pitch. Of course I was. But really, if you look at it in the black and white, light of day, you think, this is a mess.
We could just end here if you like. That's it, really. That was the game. It was shite, and those were the two main things that happened, and that was it. Okay, yeah. Let's. I'll do the same thing, and I'll agree with you, and I'll try and disagree if I can. But Tarkovsky, yeah, should have been a red, shouldn't it? Just because you could do that 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know. Scaffolders used to wolf whistle at people. Doesn't mean it's a good thing that you should still do now. It's frowned upon, and it's dangerous, and that was stupid. So I don't know why Tarkovsky is doing exactly what we'd all do if given a chance, playing against the old enemy, putting in a tackle and going, I'm gonna really make this count, and go full blooded and just try and cause some damage, which is exactly what he did. I don't know what he's thinking. And yeah, is it really frustrating to hear Jamie Carragher tut in as if it's some inhumane act that he would never have possibly even conceived of? Yeah, that's frustrating. It's also frustrating thinking, wow, I could count on multiple hands where this has gone against us for a non-red card. You think the likes of, I don't know, Rodwell in previous derbies, and then you do the other thing and think of Dirk Kuyt practically trying to obliterate Phil Neville and getting booked. It certainly didn't get talked to death. It wouldn't have Dermot Gallagher doing a kind of Downing Street press release to tell you how awful it all is, or whatever media circus got paraded out today. But should it have been a red card? Yeah. Even the most biased of Blues would admit to that. So we got away with one. And in these games, when the luck does go your way like that, and I agree with you, Andy, I think the failing there isn't so much on the referee as VAR. We actually got away with a VAR decision for once in terms of it not being reviewed and not changing decision on the pitch. But when that happens, when you get that slice of good fortune, you need to capitalise on it. Or what also happens a lot of the time in football is these things even out over the course of a game. And I think the non-offside, as you say, Andy, it's a poor rule. It's a bad interpretation of something that we all don't see the logic in watching the game. We clearly see Diaz playing a role, playing an active role. And I guess it's similar to, you'll see those times where a player is very, very obviously offside, and it kind of takes something to be active for it to then be officially ruled offside and the flag goes up. And it's that kind of performance. It's similar to that. And you almost feel as though we tend to not do well out of these kinds of moments, do we? Whereas if this was, and I'm getting the sort of referee tin hat moment on it again, but if this is Manchester United and this kind of thing happens, then I feel like it gets a lot more airtime, and maybe the rules get reviewed. Maybe there is something in this sort of grey area of the interpretation of how active is this player. Does he have to be stood in front of him? Does he have to make a movement towards a ball? Because to my eyes, he's active. As you say, Andy, the ball is played towards him with intent, and it affects Tarkovsky's decision-making, I guess, in that moment, as it did with the first incident, where he clearly just made a decision to try and really hurt someone. But it's very frustrating. But I think, again, the the game wasn't really going our way. Is it one of these Merseyside derbies where I'm thinking, how on earth have we lost that? We've played a side who aren't up to much, and if we'd have just offered a little bit more, we'd just have that little bit of fortune. Maybe we would have seen it over the line. I think it's one we can quite happily, I say happily, somewhat happily, just try and push to one side and forget about. But you're right, Andy. There's a lot more riding on this, which very easily could have been with how the season had started out, then yeah, we really be ruined that decision. But we've come to expect it, whether it's the officials on the pitch, the officials in Stockley Park, or the people making the rules. It's all kind of pretty inept, isn't it? It's a Harrison through ball of an organisation.
Very
It's
nice.
too soon. Too soon.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll come on to that. I was going to say.
Yes, I'm sure we will. That is the saving grace, isn't it? The fact that it didn't matter, and that we can sort of be angry about the decisions and annoyed about the way that the rules are compromising the game as a spectacle. But at the end of the day, it doesn't affect us in a relegation capacity, as you were saying, Andy. Tarkowski won. You see it in real time and you go, well, that's a heavy one, but he's gone for the ball. He's got the ball. But then when you see that he follows through and he catches him high, and I thought I was expecting the VAR, who was Paul Tierney, who I don't think is any friend of Everton's particularly. So, I was expecting him to advise him to at least go and look at it at the monitor. I think the thing that might have saved him was the fact that it was very early in the game, and it was a decision made, perhaps on that basis. Because you can ruin a game by sending a player off that early. It was a derby, and derbies, can go a little bit either close to the edge or over the edge. He's also our captain, and he's that kind of player, isn't he? He's got it. He's got that in his history, and Richarlison knows that all too well from when he was playing when Tarkowski was at Burnley. So I think those three things probably contributed, and I think we were lucky. And as I say, it would have ruined the game. We probably would have lost by more, and as a spectacle, as I say, the game would have been ruined. But he probably should have walked, and I don't think we could have had too many complaints. And it's just not the kind of challenge that I want our players committing, because I think he knows what he was doing. He's tried to sort of explain it afterwards that he thought they were both going in for it 50-50. You can see what in the same way that Pickford in that notorious incident with Van Dijk, and again with Nunez, there's a bit of follow through there because it's a derby. They want to kind of leave one in there, and Van Dijk did it to James Rodriguez in the same that same game back when Ancelotti was in charge. So it's just, yeah, let's not pretend that you weren't trying to go straight through him because it's a derby, and in some instances we want that, but I don't know. It was a very ugly challenge. In terms of the Diaz offside, it's one of those things where there's the letter of the law has been applied, but the spirit of the law is just cast aside. And this is my issue with offside, as I've said numerous times, and as you very well explained, Andy, is that he was in an offside position, and the law was originally introduced to stop people from hanging around in an offside position. Now, obviously, you've got instances where if the ball goes forward and the player doesn't touch it, and he's offside, but and comes back onside, and then another player who was onside picks up the ball, then you've got no problem. But of course, in this instance, he doesn't touch the ball initially, but as soon as Tarkowski makes an interception, which then more or less gives the ball back to Liverpool, and one touch later, Diaz is actually the player who backheels it to Jota, then he has interfered with play. I don't know how you can't argue it any other way. But obviously, the letter of the law says that at the time of that pass, he didn't touch the ball. He was offside, but didn't touch the ball. And then you have these phases of play argument that come into play, and so you can see by the letter of the law how they did it. But as I say, the law itself makes no sense, and it's probably one of those things that they'll look to change. And we've been on the raw end of it. as
Another-
always.
as always.
Yeah, another Everton example.
Yeah.
Another Everton example, another Everton precedent. And yeah, so but the maddening thing, of course, is that later was it in stoppage time towards the end when we had a ball slung in there, Branthwaite was offside. He didn't touch the ball, but they blew the whistle immediately. So again, the laws are the laws, and that's fine. But if they're not applied consistently, then again, that's where it just becomes really, really maddening. So yeah, I mean, it should have been offside. If you're applying common sense, it should have been given as offside. But as I say, the officials will argue why they didn't. And I've seen, one of the headlines: should the rule be changed? Yes, it probably should in that specific instance. If the player immediately becomes involved in the play, then he's been interfering. In the same way that it was argued that Gylfi Sigurdsson being on the floor in front of the goalkeeper of that Manchester United, he didn't touch the ball either. But, he was adjudged to have been interfering.
I think when you have such nuanced rules for phase 1, phase 2, which phase are we in now, everybody? Like, it's okay making rules on a bit of paper like that, but each football match and each attack is a very different thing. It's a very particular set of circumstances. You get Liverpool could have that ball again in that scenario and do something completely different. And so the rule is it's too nuanced for what is a very, very fast moving, unpredictable situation. I know you've got you've got all sorts of phases in rugby, but rugby, it works in a completely different way. The football, anything can happen at any point. That's why it's a great game. And I think when you've got a rule that isn't just kind of black and white, really. I mean, I think we all used to understand offside. If the ball was played anywhere near you and you were beyond the last man at the time, I think we all got that. It's a bit like handball. We all kind of used to know what handball meant. Now we don't really. And I just think they're trying to make. I've said it before that why would you make changes to the best game in the world? It just seems to be that they're trying to be too clever. If anybody who's ever watched or played football at all, you would obviously appreciate that player is massively affecting the game where he's standing, and therefore has to be offside in that instance. A bit like if you showed any person who played the game or watched the game Tarkowski's tackle. I bet you'd get 99 out of 100 of them saying, well, that's not good. That's in this day and age, you're off. And I think you'd get flip it, you'd get 99 out of 100 people going, well, that guy's got to be offside, surely. It just seems to be going away from, like you just said, from common sense, from what these rules are actually there for. The high tackle is there to protect players and make sure that people aren't injured. Well, that could have injured McAllister. Let's not beat about the bush. The offside rule is to make sure that people don't just hang around and tap it in. Well, that goes against that as well, doesn't it? I was just so shocked. When I first saw the replay of the goal, I was like, oh, brilliant. He's offside. Yeah. And the commentary kind of went, oh, Diaz seems to be in an offside. And then almost in the next sentence, Gary Neville said, but it's not going to matter. And I was like, oh, really? Why isn't it? It was really strange. It was so quick.
That was the thing that struck me. Sorry, Lyndon. Yeah,
go ahead.
It was the fact that it was brushed over immediately in a way that we've seen with other big decisions that go against us, and other sides as well. I mean, I caught some of the highlights from some of the other games yesterday. There were some really strange decisions in the Villa Brighton game, and I think that's it. It's not just us with our Everton hats on going, oh yeah, great tackle by Tarkowski, obvious offside. I don't think it comes from that place. I think we see these types of decisions now. You mentioned the handball rule, Andy, as well, and I think that's a similar situation as well, where something that should be quite clear cut whether it's through the rules or through really bad implementation of technology, which is supposed to make enforcing the rules even easier, it's still just, it continues to distort and blur what's, as you say, a game full of possibilities, but also it's pretty simple. It's fairly simple to understand. You said you've been watching football for 30 years. It's something that, as a game, unlike certain other sports, you don't have to. You just kind of play it and generally get it quite quickly. It's not like, I don't know, one of those crazy board games where you've got to kind of sit down with a manual and someone talks you through it and feels really good about themselves while you get ever more confused. It's pretty intuitive on the whole. So
It's a
the
simple
fact that it's
game.
getting far away, further and further away from us, it's not just us being a bit older now. Like, oh, back in my day, you could 2 foot someone in the forehead, and it was that's what you're supposed to do. It's not that. It's just the kind of the simple things made the complete opposite. And of course, we're going to give this a lot more oxygen than anyone else. Most people are going to be coming out of the game. The major talking point was the Tarkovsky decision, and the fact that Liverpool won. But the reason we have to is because, as you say, even within the game itself, it just breezed over completely by other people who played the game. That bit baffles me just as much. But at the same time, we probably shouldn't be too surprised, should we? Because yeah, we are. We're cursed. I don't know what we did, but we did something, didn't we?
The one other consideration that I was going to say is that I think that two of our defenders thought that it was going to be offside.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, Branthwaite kind of hesitates for a second. I think he's the one who puts his hand up. And so you've immediately got a situation where, yes, okay, you should always play to the whistle. But I mean, they're human beings, and I think that they're thinking in their head, that's an obvious offside. This isn't gonna count. And as I said before, the times that they choose to put the flag up immediately versus letting it run until, sometimes they let it go 30 odd seconds, and it makes absolutely no sense. So yeah, it's, they'll probably look at it like I say, we'll be the test case that makes it happen. I hope so, but anyway, the performance itself. Yeah, probably not much to write home about. Lowest XG under Moyes so far, 0.67. Lowest possession stats at a very Daichian 26%. And of course, the result means that our nine-match unbeaten run is over. More to be excited about, I suppose, in the first half, Andy, but not much in the second.
I suppose with those numbers, you've got to put the kind of caveat on that we are playing who are the best team in the league.
Yeah,
have been all year. We're playing them away from home. It just happens to be them, of course. But let's just imagine it was Man City and or whatever, or Arsenal or whoever was going to win the league this year. So I think the numbers are one thing, but what we did do is we made one absolutely brilliant chance. We were a little toe away from going 1-0 up anyway.
Yeah.
And even right at the end of the first half, which they never showed again, by the way, the free kick that went in injury time, I think Alcaraz takes it off Branthwaite's head or knee or whatever he was going to do, and you could hear him going, "Charlie!" You could hear him shout it. And I think had it been left, I think it might have been quite a straightforward chance. The first half was good in that respect. And you've got to take into account who you're playing against. I said a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was now, that you can already see that we have a system, we have a setup that will work when we have better executors up front. Right. You have a system where we are able to get the ball back and get players forward quickly, or just one player in a dangerous position like Beto was. The system is there. The individuals aren't. And I think that's what really struck me last night is, even in the first half, I felt really as if, I mean, on the strength of just the chances, not the possession and whatever, probably should have gone in front. Because either Beto just halts his run a little bit, or Tarkowski's ball is a little bit quicker, or he takes the chance that he should have taken. But I was really encouraged by the first half. It almost felt like we had something to lose after that first half performance. Second half, I mean, we're going to get on to Harrison now, aren't we? But the second half, I mean, it was painful. We were painfully bad with the ball. And again, it's not as if we didn't make... We're going back to the kind of the chance to make the chance, aren't we? You know, we make we got the chance to make the chance. We just don't ever get round to making the chance. And we did it. Yeah. I think we did it twice. I mean, obviously the Harrison one is the standout one, but there were a few times where just a decent touch or just a decent turn, which is not... I'm not talking top 4 Premier League level stuff here. I'm talking, you know, consummate professional footballer. And I'm not suggesting they're not, but I'm suggesting consistently we need players that are just able to just turn what is a promising situation into a, right, we're going for this, here we go. You know, and it was just every now and again it would come off Beto, it would come off Harrison. Someone would make a poor decision when actually if they'd made the right one, there was 3 going the other way. So it was just a frustrating night, I think, going forward with the ball. And I think if it wasn't already, I'd be shocked if he hadn't made these decisions already. I think last night rubber stamps some decisions in David Moyes' mind going forward. You know, I think it's pretty obvious now that if we're going to try and compete, not at the top, obviously, but if we're going to try and compete next year, if we're going to give the top 10 a real go, then unfortunately, and I hate to say it, it's nothing personal against people, but some of them aren't good enough. And I think we have a pretty good sample now.
Yeah. 20 million, 5-year deal for Jack Harrison. It just writes itself, doesn't it?
3 years ago, that's probably what we would have done.
Yeah. Out of loyalty. And then getting back as a kind of coach in the future as well. That side of it hasn't changed, has it? We've been saying these things now for years, under Dyche, under Lampard, under pretty much every manager since Ancelotti. We've been bemoaning that lack of quality, composure, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes, as you say, Andy, just basic decision making in the final third. And we've had little runs where that's clicked, and sometimes that's been because of the personnel, obviously early in the season, and Jai flying high, and moments of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Beto's purple patch, which it's gone, hasn't it? That's gone. It's gone. Very fleeting. It's fun while it lasted. Really enjoyed it. But you look at that 11, and I think realistically, Liverpool in the final third kind of have pretty much everything we'd like, really. Players who, in that moment, the goal from our point of view is incredibly frustrating, but Jota does exactly what the likes of Jack Harrison failed to do for 90 minutes, which is take his time and find an opening and do the right thing at the right time. And we've really lacked a player like that. We've had certain players who can... I know you made this point a few times in the past, Lyndon, that when you're shopping at that lower end of the market, when you're going, I'm going to buy someone like Dwight McNeil or Damari Gray, there's a reason they're in that bracket. There's a reason that they're available and that they're not playing for a top 6, top 8, whatever's the sort of in vogue number to choose from the more favoured clubs. But there's a reason those players don't end up there. And some of them, of course, can be sharpened and shaped into something a little more consistent. But on the whole, there's a reason why Isak costs north of £60 million, and you can grab some of these players for a fraction of that. Beto, let's do Beto quickly. He scores, so he did that. That was fun, and he is unfortunate. He caused problems for Van Dijk, and he, in terms of that system at the moment, the sort of a little bit rusty, little bit chaotic system at the top end of the pitch, making the most of those counter-attacking opportunities in games like this where, we have a lot less of a ball, which clearly we did. He kind of did all right, but the chance is really frustrating. I think the chance sums us up as an attacking unit since Moyes came in that it's fine margins. When it goes well, it goes well. But Decore's ball into Beto is poor. It's a rubbish ball, really rubbish ball. Great opening, pretty poor defending from them. It's got to be said in terms of how open they were. But I assume at that time he felt pretty confident that he could just push up really high and just camp themselves in our half. Poor ball from Decore. Beto is clumsy, but then does something quite good and makes Van Dijk look really clumsy. And then it's just on for the easiest finish you've ever seen. And you made this point yesterday, Andy, in our group chat, that, which again I'm plugging for the Patreon that's coming in 6 months, that if he just does the finish that worked in the past, he doesn't need to change it up. He changed it up against Palace away, didn't he? And he just about got away with it. But he just needs to put it across the goalkeeper, and instead he tries this kind of whipped finish against that alt-right poster boy who's played in goal for Liverpool at the minute. Don't know his name, but he's just frustrating to look at. But really, really poor finish in the circumstance, because you see it from behind. You just think, go across him. There's so much space, so much opportunity, and it's close. But I think that pretty much sums up where we're at. We've got players who show lots of effort, lots of endeavour, lots of heart, all those nice words. But in terms of that bit of quality, that little bit of something, we've probably got one player realistically in our squad, and we saw him fleetingly, and he clearly wasn't fit at all. I think if Harrison hadn't stunk the place out so badly, probably he either wouldn't have come on at all, or maybe would have had 5 minutes at the end just to get himself a couple of minutes. But beyond Njai, we are lacking that player, and we're going to come against
Alcaraz.
Got a lot more. And Alcaraz is probably the other. Yeah, I think he showed promise, and I'll let someone else talk about him. Otherwise, I'll just keep going on it, and then I'll eventually mosey into talking about Jack Harrison, and that could go on for a long, long time, like one of his aimless runs into nothing. But yeah, we are where we're at because of the lack of recruitment and because of that lack of quality. Hopefully, if there's one area to look at in the summer, you'd think that's bound to be top of the pile if it wasn't already.
I mean, you've got to hope that that's where they're focusing their, the bulk of their efforts, because defensively, obviously, we've got the fullback areas that we have known about for a long time, and they will hopefully, that left back spot in particular, be right at the top of the list. But yeah, the attacking areas have got to be next, because I think when we were talking about, when we did the show about who to keep, who to not, the entire forward line could go, and I don't think any of us would really be all that upset. Yeah, Beto, bless him. And it's funny because it's one of his poor touches that actually Van Dijk makes a mess of, that creates the chance. And then when he's there, by going to the left, the shape of his body, he really had left himself open to either missing wide of the post or hitting it. Because when you look at the replay, there's really not much to aim for. Whereas if he'd gone maybe the way that he tried against Brentford to try to curl it round to the right, maybe it goes in. But then potentially in the back of his mind, he's like, well, I did that last time and the keeper saved it, so maybe I'll go this way. And it's like, but he's had four one-on-one chances against the goalkeeper. And yeah, unfortunately, as we know, they haven't gone in. Harrison, I mean, the moment he steps on with a top knot, that's probably it. That's probably, that's.
Can I just interject there? How has it got that long? What's happened to Jack Harrison in 2 weeks? Well, yeah, but it's still. I mean, I couldn't do that. I mean, his hair was always quite short and neat, I thought, and then all of a sudden, there's enough to get in a top knot. That made no sense to me whatsoever. I spent a lot of the first half thinking about that.
Maybe he's got some kind of hair extensions going on. Who knows?
He tied
yes.
himself in knots. that much is very clear.
Yeah, it does go back to that old discussion that we have these players because of the situation we're in. But having said that, and as I've made this point before, the Jack Harrison that was at Leeds, who used to play on the left and assist and score goals for fun, he looked like a decent player. So when we signed him, I thought, yeah, absolutely, let's bring him in. We could use someone like that. It just hasn't worked for him for a number of reasons, and I've said that he usually plays better on the left. There were parts of his game last night that just weren't anything to do with where he was playing. I mean, he just couldn't find a blue shirt to save his life, and that's nothing to do with where which side of the pitch you're on. And so, yeah, I think there were reports that we had made up our minds that we weren't going to keep him, and then there were reports saying that maybe we're having a rethink. I just hope that that's it. Just he's got to go back to Leeds, and we've got to start looking at quality. If he stays, he's not going to be a first choice starter. He'll be a squad player. I don't know if that's what he wants. Probably not. But we've got to be ruthless. We haven't got any real room for sentiment. And Moyes isn't that kind of manager anyway. He's not sentimental, to that degree at all. So I think that hopefully he and the recruitment team are lining up their targets. And the fact that Lindstrom didn't get on the pitch probably speaks volumes too. We need to be ruthless, and we need to line up our targets, and we really need to add some quality in that part of the pitch. Because you look at the way that Liverpool play compared to the way that we did, there are just times where it's almost embarrassing when you've got Doucouré who just sort of stumbles over the ball and loses it. When you have 26% of the ball, the times that you do have it, you've really got to look after it, and we just don't. And so that's got to be the priority, doesn't it?
Lindstrom wasn't on the bench.
I was just thinking as I was saying that.
But again, I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But he didn't, because I actually hadn't even thought of Lindstrom coming on, which probably says all you need to know. But that was just a bit of a strange one.
Said something pre-match about a little injury.
Okay.
But
as I was saying it, I was like, I should really check to see whether, because I actually watched the game on delay actually. Because I couldn't watch it live. I came in sort of halfway through and went back to the beginning, so I didn't even see the starting lineup. I just saw who was on the pitch and thought, oh well, there's Doucouré again.
Well, on Doucouré, I mean, I can't. The bit I didn't understand was when Njai came on, he took Alcaraz off. Now, and I just couldn't understand why Alcaraz couldn't go inside, or even Njai go inside, if whatever really. Just not Doucouré, because it was one of those Doucouré nights where you thought just tearing. I mean, I'm sure even Jack Harrison teared a little bit of hair out, because it was one of those nights where we just needed that clarity of thought and that bit of technical ability. And I don't know why Alcaraz wouldn't have gone into a kind of 10 and. He had to throw stuff at it, and just by keeping Doucouré on, I didn't understand that.
In my notes, I write all the substitutions in, and I've got who did Alcaraz go on for? Anyway, whoever it was, and I just put in capital letters, why? Exclamation point, question mark. I did not see what Doucouré had done to stay on the pitch, and as you said, Andy, for the exact reason that we needed to really have a go. We didn't really have anything to lose by going for it. And I would have thought, put Alcaraz. I mean, he might have said, he was tiring. The kid's 22, and it's you might want to save him for Arsenal, but we used to play back in the 80s. Used to play every 3 days with the same 11 players. It's I don't know.
Beto's going back to Beto, it's just so frustrating, isn't it? Because he does everything himself, more or less, on those two chances that he has. One goes in and one hits the post. The fact that it's Beto kind of makes it into a chance in the first place, but the fact that it's Beto means something goes wrong.
That's the great contradiction, isn't it?
And yeah,
Because he
and
creates against Palace, or no, sorry, against Brentford.
Yeah.
Those chances don't happen if it's not Beto.
yes,
Someone probably else probably scores
If
it.
Beto
It's not
goes through
Beto.
against Forest, does he make a chance?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so frustrating because if he'd taken two of those four that you've mentioned, if he'd got another one against Brentford,
Yeah.
sorry, he got one against Brentford, and if he'd scored last night, I mean, wow. I mean, all of a sudden you're kind of thinking, well, maybe there is a place. Maybe if you're going to spend a few quid, maybe not as your number 9, but maybe there is a future for him. But the longer it goes on, you can see when the camera cuts to David Moyes, you can just almost kind of see what's going on in there, can't you? I just think it's getting more and more difficult for it to be Beto, really, in any way. Just because, yes, you can vote chaos, and yes, 1 week in 4, 1 week in 5, all of a sudden he takes 2 chances, and you're like, oh wow, here we go. But he's not going to do it every week, and I'm sorry to say it, he's just not. And I'm glad he did when he did, because we can now all breathe easily because he did. But it's quite black or white with him, isn't it, really? They either go in or they very much don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do still love the chaos, though. I
Yeah.
I really, we had this the other week. I seesaw with Beto minute by minute during a game and after it. I think about him all the time. He's bonkers, isn't he? But you see moments where he was chasing down the Liverpool goalkeeper, chasing down like a lost ball for absolutely no reason whatsoever, just something to run at, and he really he plays pretty much like no other centre forward in the Premier League. That is not necessarily a compliment, but he is very much an individual, and at times that clearly confuses the opposition. As I said, Van Dijk at times looked like he struggled with him, but then at others he is his own undoing. I think that work rate is probably the one. If we're going to give it a positive in the Jack Harrison Decore column, just to balance it out, because we don't like to pick on people on this podcast.
No, exactly.
It's very we're very fair. Apart from those Ashley Young episodes, if you want to go back through the archives, they weren't very nice. But on the whole, we're pretty fair. And Harrison did work his socks off from a defensive point of view. He's putting in a lot of yards. I think that side of it has never been in doubt. But as you said earlier, Lyndon, I think in all of those key areas, even if some of those players stick around, even if Beto sticks around as a sort of option off the bench, or someone to play here and there, and maybe make the most of those opportunities where he does look like he might go on a bit of a run of form. But on the whole, it's just that feeling that a general uplift is needed in that end of the pitch, and also to have our best player at the end of the pitch fit and available. We saw little bits of Chimiti and Brozier at the end, but without really seeing enough of them to say whether they should stake a claim for a starting position on Saturday. You'd imagine Beto did enough to still hold on to the mantle by default, really. But yeah, hopefully in this run-in we'll see more of Alcaraz, because I do think he was the bright spot, I would say, going forward. He didn't do a huge amount, but what he did works really well. And I think seeing him closer to Beto as opposed to the Decore would be interesting in this run-in, because he looks so almost likely, and I'm with you, Lyndon, that taking him off was a poor decision. But if it's with an eye on Saturday, then I can accept it. But I think we're all feeling now in April, we kind of want to. We're a bit excited to sort of jump forward a step, aren't we, really? And with some of these players, we've seen so much of them, and we've seen so many of those opportunities that, particularly Harrison in this game, he's had a catalogue of them, hasn't he, in his Everton career? And last night was, there are a few real stinkers. That one particular breakaway where he just finds a Liverpool shirt inexplicably. Mm-hmm. That alone sadly, just sums up where we're at. But again, gives hope in a way that we're probably going to rectify that in the summer, aren't we?
Well, Moyes' reaction should hopefully
Yeah,
point in that direction, because he was
yeah,
not best pleased. But I mean, that's a good segue into the Arsenal game, because I just want to see something. I said this before the derby. I want to see something different now. I want to see us experimenting with different players. I want to see Broja start. I want to see Chimiti given some decent minutes, because, as you said, Adam, we know what these others can do now. I want to see Moyes trying out what he's inherited, and to see to decide once and for all who should stick around and who shouldn't. I mean, obviously we've got this big rebuild in the summer. We can't get rid of everybody, but there are some. Better will be an interesting one. If we get a decent enough offer, I think we probably take it. But if we don't, then you've got a player who can, as you say, could cause chaos at the very minimum when he comes on. But I want to see, the argument against it in the derby was, we need to core his legs and we're going to press. We didn't really press that much last night, to be honest. It wasn't that kind of, the way that we start games at home. I mean, Liverpool pretty much had their way of it for the first quarter, an hour or so. But yeah, I want to see some changes now, because we've got the rest of the top five still to play. So you could make an argument, oh yeah, we need to have Decore in there for each of these games because of the nature of opposition. It doesn't matter anymore. I want to see these players given a chance to try and do something different. Can Broja be that player on the breakaway like Beto is, the way that we play with the through balls in behind? If Lindstrom's back fit, can he offer more than Jack Harrison? I think it's just now's the time to find these things out.
We've got the space, haven't we? We've got the space both on the table and mentally. I think there's not that kind of pressure around the games, and yeah, I completely agree. And I can't see a reason why you wouldn't. Well, if Njai's fit, didn't look it, but it maybe we might get another substitute appearance out of him. But I think you're right. I think we've got to see our options now, because equally, there's all well saying we're playing the top four, we're playing the top five. Well, if they can play well against them, that's a very good starting point.
Exactly.
It's not just kind of these new players can only play against Ipswich, or they're good players. Let's see how good they are, because that helps with the summer as well, doesn't it? So yeah, I'd be well up for him mixing it up a little bit. I mean, obviously there's only so much he can do, but the top end. I mean, I would love to see him start Chimiti on Saturday and say, "Go on, then. You're fit. You're bright. Let's go for it." Yeah. And play Alcaraz with him, and we could have some real fun with that. It might end in tears, who knows? But it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Does it? No, it doesn't.
No. Yeah. It still might, I guess. We're not mathematically safe, but you would, given the Southampton and Leicester results, and I don't know if you saw any of the Leicester game, but empty seats and really not a good feel around a lot of those clubs lower down. It is pretty much resignation time and relegation time for them. So yeah, we should be able to relax, shouldn't we? I mean, back four, you'd imagine Matt's unchanged. Quick shout out to Mikolenko, by the way, who no one expected to be fit and did his usual job on Salah, like fantastically. Really solid, worked really hard, and
he was anonymous, Salah.
Yeah,
absolutely anonymous.
Yeah. And in terms of managing him in these games, that's been pretty consistent throughout his time at the club, Mikolenko. So yeah, I think we'd like to see more cover probably on that side of the pitch, because he is going to pick up injuries. He plays a lot of games, and obviously he's a big part of the Ukrainian national team as well. Hence his injury, but I think he definitely still deserves to be in and around the club, whether as a starter or as a really good kind of rotation option. The rest of the back four, you'd imagine, stays the same. O'Brien didn't have his best game, but Diaz is a good player and really, you know, is a very different type of player to O'Brien in terms of pace and his kind of energy. So, yeah, I'd still like to see Patterson in this running. He's one of those players I mentioned previously who fits into that bill of we kind of need to know how good he is, and certainly David Moyes does ahead of a busy summer. Irabunum again looked all right, and he's one I'd like to see a little bit more of. Certainly Brozier and or Chimiti, particularly Chimiti, because I guess he's our player.
It's ours, yeah.
Yeah, and will remain so.
100%, yeah.
Really makes sense to see a lot more of him. And in Jai, yeah, as we've all kind of said at some point, I think I'd expect to see him, but certainly not from a start, given how important he is and how long he's been out. One quick mention for midfield, based on my the fact that I live in Derbyshire, is I've had a lot of Derby fans saying, "Oh, Harrison Armstrong, he's a player.
Yeah,
Bet he'll start for you next season." And Derby have managed to climb out of a relegation zone, and he's been a real driving force behind it. Obviously, he scored that great goal a couple of weeks ago, and I've had many a ram coming up to me and telling me good things, and some Derby fans. So yeah, it's been that's potentially one area of recruitment that that central area we'd expect to lose to Corey, but maybe there's someone else already at the club who can kind of come in and fill that void if Decore does depart. But yeah, I'm positive about Saturday. I think hopefully see some fresh faces, but I think just a more front foot performance, given what we watched last night, would be the minimum, wouldn't it? And yeah, see what we can do against another very good side. Another very good side, it has to be said, but we should be confident.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tricky. You know, obviously with Saka back, they're gonna be a difficult proposition for whoever plays. I mean, Mikalenko, I think it would be a very good squad option. I think we need to try and recruit someone who is a bit more of an all-rounder on that left-hand side. I mean, obviously neither fullback really got that much of a chance to go forward last night, but Mikalenko under Moyes has been given license to go forward without really. I mean, the fact that he picked up what was his first assist in over 100 games or something the other week, that probably underlines just what the fact that we need a bit more quality on that side of the pitch. So again, hopefully the targets are being lined up. Harrison Armstrong, I was actually a bit disappointed we let him go on loan, because I was looking forward to seeing a bit more of him over the rest of the season, but you have to say that it's been a really good experience for him, and I've been following each of Derby's games, looking at the result and sort of watching particularly the highlights of that goal that he scored. And as you say, you can see the Derby fans being retweeted onto timelines. They're really, really impressed with him, which is great, and that's what you want from a loan, because excuse me, because when he went there and they're rock bottom and they just changed their manager, you thought, oh hell, you could be just throwing him into the fire here. But it's been a really good experience for him, and hopefully he is in amongst it for us next season. And if not, then we can sort out another decent loan for him. But yeah, he looks a prospect. That's all I've got.
One thing I was going to mention, I don't want to open another can of worms. Could Pickford have done better for the goal? He seems to kind of... It's one of those where... really good goalkeepers, right? Top goalkeepers, which I think we can put Pickford in that bracket. A lot of their big saves are from anticipation, right? They really do make a decision to go early, therefore giving them a chance to get to the bottom corner. I just felt with that one, strangely, a lesser keeper might save it, because they won't have tried to get to the bottom corner on the left, and it kind of goes quite central. And I just looked at it in real time and thought, ooh, that looked a bit strange how that went in. Like, I don't know. I'm not one to criticise England's number one goalkeeper, because that's what he is. But it just... Why do it when everyone else does it? So. Well, yes, quite. But I just thought, that I think if he stands up, he might save it because it's not the best finish in the world, is it?
It's never a good look when it goes centrally, is it? For a goalkeeper, really. And you're right, as you say, he is the one to try and anticipate, and often it works out, but when it doesn't, it does look a little.
It was probably that sort of game from him as well. We've not had a sort of pick the D game, and it felt a little bit some strange decisions coming to crosses. A lot of the kind of a bit too much of the performative behaviour rather than we're all nodding but I also think it was very hard to criticise someone who on the whole has probably been our most consistent player over the last 5 seasons. So it wasn't an error as such, but maybe a something,
a positioning question mark.
Yeah, I'm not criticising as such. I just watched it and thought, do you know what? If you'd not tried to save it in the bottom corner, you might have got to that. It almost might have hit you. Anyway, I mean, I thought I'd mention it, but I'm not. I'm not going to open that can of worms now. I mean,
you just have.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to open it anymore.
Try and put the worms back in.
Yeah,
get back in. Yeah, I mean that's Pickford, isn't it? You take that side of it with the brilliant side.
Yeah,
and I would, as you said, Adam, net, it's been a positive.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The last few years, we wouldn't have changed him for anyone, really. I don't think so.
No, and I suppose on that note of not changing anything, I went into last night thinking, whatever happens tonight, I would not swap it for that Goodison moment and Tarkowski in February.
No.
And I think we've got to remember that.
Yeah.
As I completely agree with the dog. He remembers it fondly. And I think
just listening, that was me barking in appreciation.
But I wouldn't have swapped anything for that. And I know it's like, they won 2-2, all that kind of rubbish. But what that moment meant, it made last night a lot more of a, I don't want to use the word free hit in a derby because no derby should ever be such. But it made it a lot more easy. It made it a lot easier to accept because they hadn't done that at Goodison to us. And I just, maybe it's nice to end on that rather than a can of worms.
Agreed. All right, we'll wrap it up there for this week. Look for another episode on your platform of choice next week. Don't forget also that the shows also go out on YouTube, so please do drop us a like and a subscribe on there to help boost the profile a bit. But until next week, for real this time, take care and up the toffees.